welcome to Spooked with Emma. I'm Emma and this is part 6 of the last 6 days. There'll be 12 parts altogether, so if you enjoy this, please subscribe so you don't miss anything. And if you want to buy the paperback or ebook, the links to buy those are in the description below. I just had to pull myself together. I knew what I needed to do, decipher the notebooks, find out what it was that would make this stop, and just do it. In some ways I felt safer having this plan, as I could solve this and everything might work out okay. I took an empty sheet of paper from the back of one of the notebooks and started trying to work out the words from the handwriting, so that at least I could make a list of words to look up once I had a dictionary. I thought maybe I could go out and get one since the shops would be open until late. But the afternoon and evening seemed to disappear, and soon I found myself sitting in the dark with pages of Spanish words and no energy to leave the house and go shopping. There was nothing in the apartment that I could eat, but even though I hadn't been sick since the morning, I didn't have much appetite, and anyway, the last thing I wanted was to eat and then be ill all night. I was too tired anyway, and even though I knew what might happen, for some reason I thought that now I'd found the notebooks, and it seemed as though I was starting to make progress on solving everything. The ghosts might realise I was on their side and trying to help them, then maybe they'd leave me alone. As I tried to sleep, I told myself that it was fine, that the ghosts wouldn't harm me, and even if they were crying, it would just be because they were unhappy and needed my help. It wasn't the ghost's fault, they weren't trying to frighten me. That's what I was trying to convince myself. I didn't realise how wrong I was, so I was prepared for the ghostly crying, but still every sound I heard startled me and made me jump, and there was no way I could drift off to sleep. I don't know how much time passed, but while I was still lying there with my eyes closed, I sensed someone, obviously a ghost, walk towards me and stand next to my bed, then lean over and start whispering to me in Spanish. I couldn't understand any of it, but she was whispering in an urgent tone as though she was desperate to tell me something. Why didn't I learn Spanish before I came here? I was so stupid. The Spanish started as a whisper and then got louder and louder until she was screaming into my ear. I was terrified. I wanted to open my eyes and sit up and try to speak to her and tell her to stop. Why couldn't I? I just lay there and did nothing. And then more voices joined in. More ghosts. All of them were women's voices, screaming at me, and all in Spanish. I couldn't think or hear anything except their shrieks filling my head. Couldn't the neighbours hear this? Wouldn't one of them come to help? But I knew nobody would. I was on my own just like now. I don't know if I even have neighbours. I never met any of them. Maybe I'm the only one here. Well, not the only one. I thought in that moment, when the screaming was so loud and so terrifying, that it must be possible to actually die of fear and that maybe my heart would just stop beating and I'd die. Like the JLS song that I've had stuck in my head for days or maybe just hours, but from terror instead of heartbreak. Maybe heartbreak too. Somehow it didn't stop beating though. Maybe it would have been better if it had just stopped then. I knew that all I needed to do was reach out and switch on the light and all of it would end, like every other time. But like every other time, I couldn't. I just needed to find that little bit of courage. But all the screaming was in my head, and I couldn't think and I didn't know what to do. But then somehow, without even knowing I was going to do it, I did do it. The screaming suddenly stopped, of course, and now all I could hear was my heart beating. But I was okay, it was over. That's what I thought anyway, until I saw something red out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look at the wall right above my bed, and I saw it written in red in huge letters. VETE. What could it mean? I realised that I'd been lying to myself about how scared I really was, and I was silly to think that I could sort all of this out myself. I couldn't help these ghosts, and I couldn't stop what they were doing, and I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. I quickly grabbed some things and ran out of there. I knew I could go back to the hotel I saw earlier. I just needed to find it again, and I still didn't know the city. I thought I might be able to remember the route I'd taken that morning, but I realised that I'd made a wrong turn somewhere when I found myself on a street I definitely hadn't seen before. It was full of bars and clubs and people. A man approached me. He was obviously Latin American with soft features, thick curly black hair and dark eyes. Maybe he would help me. He said something in Spanish and handed me a card for a bar called Cibeles that I could see further down the street. Then he looked at me as though maybe somehow he understood everything I was feeling, even though I didn't even understand everything I was feeling. And I wanted so much to speak to him and explain everything, but I just smiled, and he smiled back with the kindest smile I'd seen since I arrived here, maybe ever, and walked away. I turned and walked back down the street and I was crying, maybe because it was the first time someone had been kind to me since I got here, and I really more than anything just needed someone like him to be kind to me and let me tell him everything that had happened to me. Even if he didn't know what I was saying, it wouldn't make a difference, but I'd missed my chance. I just had to find the hotel though and I'd be fine. After a little while I recognised the street I should have gone down and I found my way back to the square and the hotel. In contrast to the busy square, when I walked into the hotel there was no one in the lobby except the man at the reception desk. I asked him for a room, and when he asked how many nights I would be staying for, I didn't know what to tell him. I hadn't thought about what I was going to do, but maybe I could just stay until I decided whether to look for a different apartment or just go straight back to London. I told him a week or maybe longer. He was either so professional or uninterested that he didn't even look surprised at the vagueness of my answer or lack of luggage, and after getting me to fill out the usual forms, he gave me the key to my room on the second floor. When I opened the door to my room, I stepped in and immediately felt better. Even the smell was reassuring, and I knew I was safe now. I couldn't understand how I could go from being so scared such a short time ago to feeling almost relaxed. It was like suddenly being in the real world, and the apartment and everything that happened there was just a bad dream. I sat down on the beautiful bed and knew that I could close my eyes here and sleep and not worry about anything. After so long without resting, I wasn't sure when I would wake up, so I hung the Do Not Disturb sign on the door. This was what I was used to: a comfortable bed, attractive surroundings, soft towels, and expensive toiletries in the bathroom. This was my life, not the other one, and I wouldn't go back there. I switched on the TV, just for noise really, since I'd had nobody to speak to for so long. A man who looked like a Spanish Louis Theroux was going up to random people in the street and speaking to them, and somehow the woman walking around with him seemed to be winning money or trying to win money. I would have thought game shows would be the easiest kind of programs to understand in a foreign language, but I couldn't work it out. The contestants kept changing and I couldn't tell whether they'd won anything. I changed the channel and found something that seemed to be a bit like the X Factor or maybe Stars in Their Eyes. There was a middle-aged man dressed up as a schoolboy with painted-on freckles, shorts and a rucksack, singing something in Spanish and apparently trying to sound like a child. I couldn't really make much sense of this program either, because surely he'd stand a better chance of winning if he tried to sound like someone who was at least an adult. The next woman was singing an old Motown song, except that instead of the Age of Aquarius, she was singing about the Age of Aquarium. Not that I'd be able to sing Spanish lyrics correctly, but it still made me laugh, although maybe I was just a bit hysterical. It was so bizarre, but the normal kind of bizarre, if that makes sense. The kind of bizarre that happens in real life, not the kind that only happens in horror films. Anyway, it was at least entertaining. Now that I didn't have that anxious feeling anymore, I was quite hungry, so I took some crisps from the minibar while I looked at the room service menu. Luckily there was an English translation, so I didn't have to worry about accidentally ordering pig's ears or anything. I rang down and ordered ham croquettes, olives, bread and chorizo. I was excited about my mini buffet. I once had a business idea for a buffet for one. I thought it seemed unfair that people who live alone can't take advantage of the M&S mini party food because really, who wants to eat 12 mini duck spring rolls to themselves? The whole point of party food is to have a variety. So wouldn't it be good if you could buy a one-person buffet with a couple of spring rolls, smoked salmon blinis, mini quiches, that kind of thing? I think the dragons might have liked it, but they always want business plans and things. I can only do ideas. And anyway, people might be too embarrassed to buy something that clearly tells the person at the till that they are single and going to pretend to themselves that they're at a party when really they're just at home on their own. They could always go to the self-service till, I suppose, then they wouldn't have to be embarrassed. Although I'm sure it won't be long until technology evolves so that the annoying unidentified item in bagging area woman starts being able to comment on people's purchases. The food arrived quickly, and I ate it sitting cross-legged on the bed while someone who was dressed as Shakira but who was clearly male sang Whenever Wherever in Spanish. He even did the yodeling part, and the audience seemed to love the whole performance, especially the belly dancing. I didn't know what the judges were saying, but the Shakira man seemed happy, so it must have been positive. Maybe the Spanish just have really unusual taste in entertainment. I wondered whether the format would make it to the UK. I couldn't really imagine it. Actually though, I think I might have seen an advert for something like it on ITV. Well, I thought that surely people in the UK wouldn't watch anything like this. Anyway, the food was delicious, and it made me feel full and warm and sleepy. The best thing was I knew I could sleep here and everything would be fine. I smiled to myself, the truest kind of smile I sometimes think when there's nobody else around, and laid back on the bed. I just wanted to sleep. I didn't even want to get undressed or brush my teeth, but I eventually persuaded myself to get up and I got ready for bed in my beautiful bedroom. Then I settled into bed and confused myself trying to turn off the lights. There were so many switches, and at one point I accidentally turned on pink lighting, which was quite fun, but not really what I was aiming for. Eventually I managed to turn off all the lights except the one by the door, which I left on just in case. I felt safer, but not that much safer. And soon I felt myself falling asleep. I didn't wake up until the morning. Bright sunshine was coming through the gap in the curtains, and I opened them and looked down onto the square. It was busy with people. I had expected that I would probably sleep for at least 12 hours, but it was only 9:30. I felt so rested compared with just a few hours ago. I decided to have a bath and wondered whether the hotel had a spa. That would be wonderful. I could have a massage and start to properly relax and get back to normal. The bath was huge and the toiletries were lovely. I stayed in there for ages, starting to feel like the old me again. Now all I needed was to meet some friends for lunch and shopping, and I'd be back to real life. Even though I didn't feel scared anymore, and as far as I knew, I no longer had any reason to worry about any of this, I still felt so lonely. I'd hardly spoken to anyone for days, and when I had, it was a couple of words here and there. I thought I might have forgotten how to even have a conversation, it had been so long. I thought about the man from last night, and that I should have talked to him, but there was no point dwelling on past mistakes. Anyway, it definitely seemed like things would be fine now. And they would have been if I'd just stayed there. I should have stayed in that room and never left, and got them to bring me my food and watch those bizarre TV programs, and I should have never stepped out of that hotel where everything was okay and I didn't need to be scared. I thought I would stay. I thought I would never come back to this apartment. I didn't need to, and why would I after everything that had happened to me here? I didn't know that I would come back and that this time I would never be able to leave again.